the program back up and running. So what we're going to do today is exactly that. The first thing we're going to do is, as you remember, one of the main points of CLIP is to give presentations about climate change to your fellow peers in school. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to show you an updated set of slides that you will be using as a group at your school. And Julieta is going to present them to you and show you what they're like now. And those will be the exact slides you will be using for the rest of the school year. And then the second thing we're going to do is I'm going to give a presentation to you all about what's changed about CLIP. So why are we even touching base? What's new? How are we going to be doing this virtually? And basically answer any other questions you may have. Before we jump into any of that, I definitely do not want to be tone deaf to the situation that our country is experiencing right now. And I really wanted us to take a second to ground us in the moment and consider everything that we've been seeing in the last week or so. And I just want to say that if anything feels overwhelming, especially while you're handling school, work, extracurriculars, whatever it is in your life, just know that that's okay and that's normal. And that as people at Clio and your teachers, I'm sure would agree, we're here if you need support for anything or if anything ever feels too overwhelming. And I just do want to add that if it is kind of scary and worrisome, just know that when we see all these people who oppose like social progress or climate action or whatever it is that you hold strongly, just know that these people are fighting so hard because they know that our movement is so strong right now. So that's just something I wanted to put out there. Keep in mind as you go through, because obviously everything we've been experiencing lately is heavy. So just know we're here to support you always. So with that being said, Julieta, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and begin.
Thanks. So today I'm going to be sharing a presentation. It's going to take about 15 minutes. If you are certified already, many of these slides will look familiar to you. They just have a new look and feel for Clio. And then if you are not certified, we'll work with you over the next few weeks to get certified. But this is the slide deck that you'll be using for your certification process. If you have any questions, please use the chat box and we'll field them at the end. So give me just a moment, I'm going to share my screen and then we can get started.
I'll also add that if you don't know, this session is being recorded. So if anything here moves too fast for you, or you obviously want to look back on how this presentation is done, you can definitely do so in the future. We'll make sure to post this and share it with all of you.
Can everyone see my slides on full screen mode?
Yeah, we're good.
I can see it.
We can see it.
Sounds good. So again, this slide presentation is being recorded, but if you would like to take notes, I definitely encourage that as well. So the new branding for 2021 is called Superheroes Among Us. That is the title, and at the bottom you'll see our supporting partners. This is going to be the opening slide for your presentation. And this is where you can introduce yourself with your name, your grade level, your school name, and a story or two, a sentence or two about your climate story. So we'll go ahead and get started. When you ask someone who is a superhero, you typically get answers like comic book characters, including Superman, the Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man. With the coronavirus pandemic, we've also seen the term superhero apply to many more people, like medical workers, our first responders, our truck drivers, and our grocery store employees. We've also been seeing a new class of superheroes emerge, and that's the youth. Each student comes from a unique background and brings their own skills to the climate movement. Much like the Justice League, students around the world are using their superpowers in the battle against a very powerful nemesis, the climate crisis. The images on the screen are from September 2019, when millions of students around the world joined forces, raised their voices, and demanded climate action and accountability from elected officials. The image at the top right of your screen is actually from Miami Beach, where we held the Miami Youth Climate Strike on that day. But what exactly were these students trying to accomplish? Why did they go on strike? And why were they insisting that the world cannot wait much longer? To answer all of these questions, we have to start at the beginning. And the beginning is in understanding weather versus climate. Weather refers to the conditions of the atmosphere over a short period of time, which can change within minutes or hours. And climate refers to how the atmosphere behaves over a long period of time. That's decided over decades. And the way that climate is regulated on the planet is through the greenhouse gas effect. In simple terms, the greenhouse gas effect is the way that energy passes through our Earth's atmosphere. If we take a look at the image on the screen, you can see that the sun releases sunlight in the squiggly yellow waves. This sunlight enters the Earth's atmosphere, which is this blue thin line surrounding the Earth. The Earth absorbs the sunlight and reflects it back into space, which is all these squiggly red lines. In the atmosphere, we have greenhouse gases that trap some of this outgoing heat and help keep our planet warm. Now, you may have heard that term greenhouse gases before, but in order to understand why they're important, we have to understand what they do. And greenhouse gases are famous for trapping heat. In a normal scenario, the greenhouse gas effect is a good thing because it maintains a favorable temperature on Earth that's necessary for life. Without the greenhouse gas effect, we would essentially be living on a frozen planet. However, we're getting into some issues now because human industry, like the burning of fossil fuels, is increasing the concentration of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. And we're increasing the heat trapping capacity of our atmosphere, which makes our planet warmer. Now, have you ever heard someone say that climate change isn't a threat? That the climate has always changed and that we're just in a cycle? If so, this chart is very important to understand. It measures carbon dioxide levels over the last 800,000 years. And as you can see on the chart, the line fluctuates up and down over this time period. The high points on the chart indicate periods of relative warmth, while the low points on the chart indicate periods of relative cold, like ice ages. For millennia, atmospheric carbon dioxide had never been above 300 parts per million, which is where that red line is. Around the 1800s and 1900s, we started seeing large increases in carbon dioxide levels. And in the 1950s, we actually crossed that threshold of 300 parts per million. And the concentration of carbon dioxide has been increasing since then, fueled largely by human activities. We can now measure 415 parts per million as of November of 2020, which is the highest concentration that humankind has ever seen. And so there are really two takeaways from this chart. And one is that the climate varies naturally through factors like volcanic eruptions, changes in the Earth's orbit and tilt. So yes, the climate has always changed. However, human industry has pushed carbon dioxide concentrations beyond that natural cycle. So we can't say that we are in the natural cycle anymore. And as we start to explore the impacts, we start seeing changes in our oceans. And oceans act as carbon storage. In fact, they are our largest carbon storage system. The oceans have absorbed about 93% of excess heat generated by greenhouse gases. This also contributes to a decline in oxygen concentration levels, which affects all the biodiversity in the ocean. And ocean acidification is becoming more prevalent. As you can see on this image, our coral reefs are being decimated by the increased temperatures of our oceans. Coral reefs are really important, not only for tourism and recreation, but they also provide us protection during hurricanes, which is very important here in South Florida. Another impact of a warming planet is extreme weather. As the planet gets warmer, so does the water in the ocean, and that contributes to stronger and larger hurricanes. It leads to heavier rain and a higher storm surge. Extreme weather also brings health impacts like injuries, deaths, and mental health impacts like anxiety and post-traumatic stress. This chart is important to understand. This shows a trajectory of Hurricane Michael in 2018. And as you can see on the screen, it says that the water was 5 degrees warmer than average. That's really important to note because this warmer temperature allowed the storm to increase about 70% in strength in just about a day and a half. When it made landfall in the North Florida, it was the third strongest storm ever to hit the United States. And so I want to take a moment to just use the chat function through Zoom and tell me if you have lived through a hurricane. And if you have, what is one adjective to describe how you felt? You can let me know in the chat. How did you feel during a hurricane? So I do see a lot of overwhelming emotions: fearful, scared, nervous, stressed, anxious. And so we definitely see that the mental health implications of extreme weather, as well as other climate impacts, are evident in our public. Thank you all for sharing. These are some of the images of extreme weather and what we see in impacts on people as well as on our communities. Another thing we have to be focused on in South Florida is sea level rise, because we are a very low-lying region. Sea level rise is the result of thermal expansion and land ice melting. Thermal expansion is the way that water expands when it warms up. In South Florida, we can expect about 2 feet of sea level rise by 2050. And by 2100, 8 to 10 feet is a possibility. The image on the right of your screen shows Miami-Dade County today and Miami-Dade County with projected 8 feet of sea level rise. And I ask you to just take a moment and see, how will sea level rise impact you, either your neighborhood or your family, your school? Where are the favorite places in Miami-Dade County that you like to visit? And will they be here if we reach 8 feet of sea level rise? This is what Florida as a whole would look like by the end of the century if we're continue on the projected path. Saltwater intrusion is another big vulnerability. In South Florida and many other coastal areas around the world, sea level rise brings saltwater intrusion. Unlike other parts of the country that gets its drinking water from lakes or rivers, most of South Florida gets its drinking water from under the ground, like the Biscayne Aquifer. And aquifers are great storage for our fresh drinking water. As the sea level rises, however, seawater from underneath and from the east contaminate our drinking water. And the fact that South Florida rests on a bed of limestone makes this worse. As you can see on the screen, this is what limestone looks like, and you can sometimes identify it like a sponge. It's a very porous rock, which allows water to flow through it quite easily. This poses a danger to our drinking water because it makes it easy for seawater to enter our freshwater supply. I mean, sure, we can remove the salt water from our freshwater supply. That's a process that's called desalination. Indeed, we already have desalination facilities in Miami-Dade County, but this is a very expensive process. And many cities don't have the funds or capacity to keep up with water demands for our county. So we expect Miami's drinking water as a result to become more expensive as sea level rise increases, and that's going to disproportionately impact vulnerable communities. The forests on our planet are also sources of carbon storage. They absorb massive amounts of carbon dioxide through biological processes like photosynthesis. By absorbing carbon dioxide, they also act as the lungs of the earth because they release fresh oxygen. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that 19 million acres of forest are lost each year due to agriculture, forestry, and other land uses. This is a double problem because when we cut down our trees, we're reducing the capacity to store carbon, and we're also releasing the carbon that they were storing. Beef production is the leading cause of tropical deforestation. The fires that we saw in the Amazon early last year were largely due to clearing forests to make space for cows. Beef production is also harmful because cows release methane gas through digestion, and methane is up to 25 times more potent at trapping heat than carbon dioxide. Another tremendous impact of the climate crisis is extreme heat, particularly how it impacts our health. Extreme heat is the deadliest natural disaster in the United States, and it kills more people on average than hurricanes, lightning, tornadoes, earthquakes, and floods combined. By 2050, this chart indicates that we will see about 126 days of danger days, which is where the heat index is above 105 degrees. Now, the heat index measures temperature as well as humidity, and it shows us what the weather would feel like. So it feels like 105 degrees. This is really dangerous for people who play outside and work outside. And for those of you who are student athletes in the group, did you know that heat-related illnesses are the leading cause of death or disability among high school athletes? This is something that we have to be super careful about. There are days where it would be too dangerous to work or play outside, and think of all of the people that rely on that. Our farmers, our construction workers, our children and engineers. A warmer world poses great risks for all kinds of people. And extreme heat. What is wrong with this picture? So if you can take a moment and just answer in the chat what you think is wrong with this picture. Now, just to give you a little bit of context, this is a bus stop in Miami-Dade County. All right, so Gianna did answer correctly, as well as Emery and Elisa. Yes, there is no shade, and so that becomes a real health hazard for people who rely on public transit, especially as our temperatures are predicted to increase. Marginalized communities are going to feel the heat in relation to their housing, utility bills, as well as transportation. Did you know that the US Department of Housing and Urban Development doesn't require AC units in affordable housing? And for those that do have AC units, their utility bills are going to get higher, and they could have health risks if they rely on public transit to get around. And so before we get into the solutions, let's just really take a moment to check in with ourselves and think about why this matters on a big scale. If climate impacts are projected to take more than 50 years, why bother now? Why is the climate crisis and action so urgent? Well, one answer is because climate action benefits the whole world. Even those who don't understand the climate science yet can understand the benefits of things like green jobs, livable cities, clean water, and healthy children. I know we have that common ground with everybody around us. Yes, many people will survive the climate crisis, either because of their economic status, access to resource, or even where they live. But even more than that, isn't it better to thrive than to survive? And so let's get into solutions. There are two types of solutions, mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation reduces heat trapping gases, such as renewable energy through solar panels, and adaptation adapts to the effects of climate change, such as living shorelines, which protect our cities from rising seas. So one of the solutions that gets talked about a lot is the Green New Deal, and there's a lot of confusion about what it is and what it is not. So to begin with, the Green New Deal is a resolution. It is not a law, but it aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions while also trying to fix societal problems like economic inequality and racial justice. And a couple of ideas that the text include upgrading buildings to achieve energy and water efficiency, public investments in research and development, growth in clean manufacturing, and working collaboratively to remove pollution in the agricultural sector. So while the text within the Green New Deal is not binding, the Green New Deal provides a framework of ideas that Congress can use to inspire new laws. And the fact that it approaches other societal norms is something to champion. Another proposal to mitigate the climate crisis is the Paris Accord, and it aims to limit increases of global temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit by 2050. And as you can see on the chart on the right of your screen, China is the top emitter of greenhouse gases in the world, followed by the United States. But as you can see in the next chart, if you measure on a per capita basis, meaning per person, the United States is the top polluter of greenhouse gases. Now, this is not to lay blame on any particular country. It's to recognize that we all have to work together to fix and take responsibility for our pollution. So we start getting into the solutions and what we can do on a personal and policy level. Plant-based meals are a great way to reduce our carbon footprints, as is reducing food waste because we prevent food from releasing methane when it breaks down in landfills. Composting is also a great way to give a second life to our food scraps and create nutrient-rich fertilizer. And systemic changes, what can we do to make sure that our food systems are healthier? From increasing access to farmers markets to regenerative agriculture, there are a lot of policy changes that we can do and ask for that are going to protect our planet and also make sure that people have healthy foods. Your purchases. Buying less is a great way to protect the environment. Using reusable over single-use items. Participate in sharing economies. Not everybody has to own every item. We can share alongside each other, and there are many groups online that do that. We can also buy secondhand and give a second life to items and clothing. And then whenever possible, buy local, ethical, and sustainable products. We can also be climate activists through our purchases, and we can hold corporations and producers responsible for the items that they are producing. Policies like plastic bans are also effective ways of limiting single-use plastics. And as we start approaching the end, we start seeing that our energy systems are another opportunity for change. We can reduce our personal energy consumption, and there are many ways to do that, from washing your clothes in cold water or turning off the lights. And I encourage you to adapt as many as you can into your lifestyle. But we can also advocate for policy changes. And one of the policy changes that we can do is, how do we use our land? Compare this parking lot in Miami, Florida to a parking lot in Atlanta. And we can start to see how we can generate electricity and protect cars simultaneously. And we can adapt that creativity to many other aspects of our community. And so to close, we ask you really to use the power of your voice. Join CLIP and advocate for climate action with us. Help us contact our elected officials, educate our peers and families, and create meaningful change in our school and community. The climate crisis needs you and needs all the superpowers that you bring. You each have a unique story and a unique experience. And so let's make this the strongest generation of climate superheroes yet. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Huli. I see snaps. I see claps in the audience. Thanks so much, Huli, for presenting that to everybody. So in case you missed it, that is essentially the presentation you would be giving now on campus to students in your school. And if you haven't become a certified Clio climate speaker yet, that is something that we will work with you over the next few weeks to make sure you are, so that you can give this presentation on campus. All right, so with that done, now I'm going to give a presentation about how CLIP is going to work this year. So if you just give me a second, I'll bring up that PowerPoint. Can you all see my screen fine?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds good. All right, so today, one of the reasons for this meeting, as stated earlier, was to explain to you how CLIP is going to work this year. And we'll begin by giving you a timeline. So first thing is, right now we're in January, so we're really just kind of checking back in and rallying up people who want to be part of CLIP at your schools. And we know that you have some new members in your club, probably, maybe freshman or sophomore, that want to also become certified climate speakers and give presentations on campus. With that being said, when we enter February, the first thing that we need to do, actually really starting maybe towards the end of January, is to get any students in your club that haven't been certified yet, certified. And when I'm talking about certifications, what I'm talking about is you essentially will practice the presentation you just saw and on your own time, and then give that presentation to your teacher or a CLIO staff member, and we will tell you, awesome, you presented it well, you are now a CLIO climate speaker. With that credibility, with that certification, you have the credibility and you have the skill to give that presentation to other students in your school. And if you want to go beyond that, you also have the capability to give that presentation to anybody in your community. So a church or a library, anywhere else, obviously following social distancing guidelines. We're going to talk a little bit later, and you'll see later in the documents that I show you that we encourage you obviously to give these presentations now online, and we know some of you are online and some of you are not. So that's really depends on how your school is doing it this year. So that's February, and also in February, you are asked to also give your peer-to-peer presentations. So if you were with us last year, which the majority of you were, you'll remember that the requirement for CLIP was to give at least 2 presentations about climate change on your campus to your high school, right? To other students in your school, whether it's on campus or online. That does not mean that every single person in CLIP needs to give a presentation. What that means is that your group as a whole in CLIP needs to give 2 presentations. So maybe some of you are really good at presentations, but some of you are really good at developing campaigns or doing more advocacy things. That's where your role comes into play. So that's February. We want to get everybody certified, and we want you all to do your peer-to-peer presentations. Going into March, you may also continue doing your peer-to-peer presentations, or maybe you need the extra time to complete the 2, but by March, you should have already done 2 of them, especially because your groups have had the training since last year. And then in March, we're going to hold a storytelling workshop, which is actually going to be led by 2 to 3 students that work with the CLIO Institute across Florida. So the storytelling workshop is going to be an optional thing. It's not mandatory like the presentations are, but it's a really good opportunity for you to augment your communication skills about the climate crisis. Because what we've seen is that people want to own their climate story. They want to talk about climate change in the way that they relate with and the way that it has impacted their lives. And not only do people want to do that, but that's also how people want to learn about climate change. So storytelling is a really powerful technique to communicate climate change, to get people mobilized around the issue, and for people to just really resonate with it and essentially join the movement. So we're going to hold an entire workshop about that. Again, it's optional, but it's a really great way for you to improve your speaking skills, especially because later on in the year, we want you all to give climate presentations to your loved ones as well. Then April comes along, and again, for the majority of you that have been with us since last year, you'll know that we do an Earth Day campaign. We're doing an Earth Day campaign again this April. So how it works is during the month of April, you will do a campaign about climate change, and you will choose a specific topic, whether it's hurricane preparedness or sea level rise or food waste, but something that has to do with climate change and raising awareness about the science of it, the impacts of it, and of course, providing solutions to the issue under that topic. Again, depending on the circumstances of your school this year and the circumstances of you as a student, this campaign can be done online or on campus, but we expect that the majority of you will probably do this online so that it's more inclusive and everybody can participate a little bit better. But of course, there could be a blend of the 2. So in April, because that is when Earth Week is, I believe it's from April 18th to April 20-something this year, that's when your campaign would be at full gear, and you would be spending Earth Week to increase climate awareness among your student body. So that's what April is going to be all about. And then we move on to May, where we introduce this new requirement for CLIP called Loved Ones Conversations. So essentially what you would be asked to do is to give that presentation about climate change that you are already going to be skilled to do to a loved one. So that could be a parent, a neighbor, a close friend, an aunt, an uncle, a sibling, just somebody in your life that you hold very close to. And the reason that we're doing this and we're encouraging you to do this is because we know that people know about climate change, but we're not talking about it enough. The vast majority of people in our country actually support climate action, but it's just not being talked enough at home. So this is a really great way to also stir that conversation and bring climate action back to your household. And then finally in May, we'll wrap up with a CLIP graduation, and that's just going to be a ceremonial thing. So of course that's optional, but we'll invite you, your parents, your teachers, administration, anybody who wants to join just to celebrate your efforts for raising climate awareness during the school year. Alrighty, so that's a timeline of CLIP over the next few months. And with that being said, to establish better communication and be a little bit organized between the CLIO Institute and between your groups at your school, we are offering the CLIP coordinator position as a leadership and volunteer opportunity to any student in your group that really wants to take ownership of their climate efforts. And the expectations of this role would be to support, guide, and motivate all of the group's activities. So essentially, it's like the president of a club, except you're really more facilitating things, working with the students, and providing a channel of communication between your group and the CLIO Institute. So you would be in charge of keeping track of and reporting the group's progress, and you would also have to help coordinate monthly meetings for the group. And you would also be responsible with meeting with CLIO at least twice a month so that we can check in with you and hear about how your group is doing. So if this is something that interests you, and of course, if you have questions, we can provide more information, please advise your teacher by this Friday. So if this isn't a position that you want to take on to be the CLIP coordinator of your group, let your teacher know by Friday, and then we will be reaching out to all of our teachers early next week to hear which students want to be a CLIP coordinator, because from there we can reach out to you all and start to communicate with you. All right, so I already kind of explained what the program requirements are for the school year through the timeline, but I want to just give you more of like a bulleted note and possibly go into slightly more detail. So I didn't mention this on the timeline, but just like last year, your group must have monthly meetings. So the thing about this year, though, is that when we established CLIP last year, we made a strong effort to be present at every single monthly meeting that the schools had held. This year, it is still mandatory that you hold group meetings once a month to obviously address the objectives of the program and do planning, but the CLIO Institute is not necessarily going to attend those meetings. Instead, what we're doing is we are going to hold CLIP coordinator meetings. So what those are, a CLIP coordinator meeting is going to be a meeting that CLIO will hold with only the CLIP coordinators of the schools. So let's say you're the CLIP coordinator of your school at Booker T. Washington. You would come to our CLIP coordinator meetings with other students that represent their schools, and we just will check in with you and hear about what you're doing, answer any questions your group may have. And that'll just be a little bit more organized and allow us to communicate what we're trying to do more effectively. And then again, the other program requirements that we talked about is that you must give at least 2 climate presentations in your school. You must carry out an Earth Day campaign in April, and every individual student must do the loved ones conversations. 2 other notes. The first thing, as mentioned earlier, all activities this school year are going to be virtual. So anything that CLIO does that we provide to you, like any event or anything that we ask to see, will be done virtually. We will not be physically visiting any schools. The second thing is that, again, any new member to CLIP this school year must become a certified CLIO climate speaker. So if you know that you need to go through that process, please let your teacher know, because I will be reaching out and asking those teachers who those students are so we can begin making sure that they get certified. Okay, and then you're probably, as I'm explaining this, you're probably like, okay, how are we doing this virtually? Because how are we going to keep track of everything? we made a CLIP headquarters. So basically what it is it's a Google Drive. I'm sure the majority of you are really familiar with Google Drive at this point, especially because everything's been so online now. But if you aren't, it's basically a platform under Google that will house everything about CLIP. So I'm talking about documents that will explain what you should be doing, forms that you should be filling out to show that you're progressing as a group, extra things you might need like a request letter form, contact information. Of course, the actual PowerPoint you will need will be there as well. So everything will be under a CLIP Google Drive now that you need to stay updated, carry out your activities, and report your progress. And then additionally, we have the CLIP Google Calendar. So that's going to be a place where your group can just go look at our CLIP Google Calendar if you're confused about what you should be doing that month or when an event is. And it'll be on that calendar and you will have access to it all times. And all of the events will have like the listed documents that you need to carry out that objective for the month, right? And then again, I am the main point of contact for this program. So if you need anything or if you have any specific questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me via email. Please refrain from texting me or calling me. But if you have any questions that you feel are quick and are relevant to the entire group, of course, continue to use our group chats. And then finally, I want to share this event with you that we're holding next Tuesday. This is an upcoming CLIP event that we are holding really for new schools that are joining CLIP this year. So schools that didn't have CLIP like you all last year. And it's going to be we're going to give a Climate 101. It's going to be slightly more in depth than what you got today. It's going to have a few extra slides, more time for questions and activities. So it's an opportunity for deeper exploration and learning. This is not a mandatory event for you to attend, but it would be really beneficial for anybody who feels like they need to brush up their literacy, anybody who needs to be certified at your school and you feel like you need, just extra climate literacy under your belt. This would be a really good thing for you to attend because although this event is optional as a student, you don't need to attend. Your certification is mandatory. So you want to make sure that you are completely prepared to give this presentation so that you can give presentations at your school as a member of CLIP. So with that said, that is the end of my presentation. I will stop sharing. And yeah, it's going to be 5 o'clock. So I think